Hello, I'm Logan.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Devin.
We are making this video to teach you about bike safety.
Most of the time, people take their helmets for granted. I am one of those people. I will occasionally forget to wear my helmet, but to be honest, I just don't really care.
With the research that we have done, we have discovered that wearing your helmet actually does a lot more things than you may think. Let's talk about the helmet first.
You may have heard many times that you should wear your helmet, but have you actually stopped to think about what's inside the helmet that keeps you alive? There are a couple of different components. As you can see here, this is a regular bike helmet. This plastic outer coating on the helmet is meant to keep your head from being impaled with sharp objects. And on the inside here, it is usually made of a soft padding, which is styrofoam or a certain type of foam. This part of the helmet is usually meant not to absorb the collision energy, but rather slow down the amount of time it takes to hit the pavement and somewhat cushion your fall.
Now let's talk about the science aspect of force and collisions.
There is actually a decent amount of things to consider in a collision. One thing is that we have to take into consider is the outside forces acting upon you. There are a couple things that control the way you collide with the ground. Gravity is always acting upon your body to keep you down on the earth. But as Newton's third law states, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the ground is countering that and keeping you up.
There are some other things that act upon your body, like friction, air resistance, stuff like that. But what we are looking at today is what happens to your body when you get in a collision on a bicycle.
There are things that we're going to factor into this hypothetical crash. The velocity at which you are moving, your mass, your force that you are applying to the ground, and the outside forces acting upon your body as you crash. These are all things that we are going to consider in the hypothetical.
There are a couple of ways that this crash can go. It all depends on your mass and velocity or acceleration. Let's say that you weigh 140 pounds or 63.5 kilograms, and you are traveling at a speed of 25 miles per hour or 11 meters per second, and reached 0 meters per second when you collided with the wall, and have traveled a total of 15 feet, and this crash lasted 4 seconds. Now, here is where all the boring numbers come in, so let's go through them.
So there are a couple of different calculations that we will be doing throughout finding the force. So the equation to find force is F equals mass times acceleration, or F equals ma. To find these different components, of course, m is your mass, and we've already established that you weigh 140 pounds or 63.5 kilograms. That is your mass. But to find acceleration, we will have to do a little bit more work. To find acceleration, it's change in velocity over time, which is change in velocity divided by time. Your change in velocity went from 11 to 0, so your change in velocity is 11. And this all happened in a span of 4 seconds, which gives you 11 over 4, which calculates out to 2.75 meters per second squared. Now we substitute all of these variables into the equation. So force, or F, equals mass, which we established as 63.5 kilograms, times your acceleration, which we established to be 2.75 meters per second squared. Now, after we run this through the calculator, we have found that your force in this crash would be 174.635, or if you want to round it up, your force will be 175.
Now that we have calculated that you will be receiving around 175 newtons of force during your collision, It is important to know that while 175 newtons of force doesn't sound like a lot of force, it still has enough force to put you in the hospital based upon if you wear your helmet or not. If you aren't wearing your helmet, it could still rupture your skull and cause a concussion, as well as tear some skin and ruin some of your muscles. If you do wear a helmet, there's a possibility that your concussion either won't be that bad or will not exist there at all, and you could avoid some major damage to your head.
No.
So now that we've given you all these numbers to work with, we are now going to do a visual representation of what happens to your head if you don't wear a helmet. So as my associate Devin will do here, he will demonstrate what happens when a watermelon hits the pavement without a helmet. Now as you can see here, it's split open and its contents have been ruined. Now that we have shown you what it's like to drop a watermelon without your helmet on, let's demonstrate what a human head would do with a watermelon. Devin, if you will. It received a little less damage, and the inner parts are actually pretty clean. So you would receive some damage, but it's definitely a smaller magnitude than if you were to not wear your helmet.
After all these calculations and watermelon smashings, you can see that wearing a helmet is very important.
Since helmets are able to reduce the amount of force your skull takes, it is able to prevent things like a concussion, or even worse, death.
Each part does their job. For instance, the outer shell of your helmet is what's protecting your head from the sharp things on the road. And when you eventually hit the road, your head will slide a little bit so the helmet is keeping your head from being grounded into the pavement.
The inside part of your helmet actually compresses when you hit the ground, therefore causing the energy to disperse and lengthen the amount of time it takes for your head to collide with the ground, and that takes a lot of force out of the equation. Therefore, keeping your head is safer than if you didn't wear your helmet.
So I think that one thing that we can take away from this is that you should wear your helmet. Like it said many times, it can save your life.